Hey y'all, can you believe tomorrow's February? I love February. Both my kids were born in February, so I just love February. But February is coming very soon, actually tomorrow. And I always think of February and friendship going together. You know, a lot of us focus on Valentine's Day and we might put some hearts in our sensory table and in our art center and things like that. But I have really lately been trying to be intentional about teaching children social emotional skills. And so, what better time to focus on friendship than February? Because we can also love and respect our friends, right? And so, I like, I truly, truly believe that by helping children, sorry about that little interruption. So, I truly, truly believe that we when we help children learn their own self-awareness about themselves, social awareness about others, and how to engage in healthy relationships, we are helping them become better functioning adults later in life. And like, who doesn't want that, right? We need more functioning adults. And so I feel like our job, a big part of our job, maybe one of the most important parts of our job, is social emotional skills. We have got them when they're young. We are in this space, especially if you're a play-based center, play-based classroom. You've got this awesome space where all these awesome opportunities to teach children are arising, right? There are conflicts in their play with other children, and you can help them through that. You can teach them how to talk to other people, and it's just we have such a opportunity to do that for them and to help them learn those skills because they are skills, right? They are missing some of their social emotional skills when we see kids hitting other kids or taking a toy out of their hand. They're missing the understanding of how to handle it in a different way. And so we have that opportunity as early educators to start that path, right? Right alongside their family, we can help start that path. So when it comes to teaching children about being good friends and friendship, it really does start in our preschool classrooms because sometimes this is the first time that children have come in contact with other children or even other children that they may not have similarities with, right? And so they are definitely learning to appreciate others' differences, and we need to all be able to live together, right? And so we got to help them learn how to do that. And so I full fully believe that the best time to teach children social emotional skills, friendship skills, all those things are while it's all happening, right? While there's an opportunity. So when they're in the moment, they're going to learn it best because they need it right then, right? It may not get stored back here and pulled out when they need it because they may not know how to calm themselves yet and they may not know how to get through that situation. And so, the absolute best time that we can help children learn social skills is during the moment, during free play. If they are sitting at tables all day doing worksheets or things like that, they're not going to have that opportunity to have that conflict, to have those feelings and those emotions, and we won't have as many opportunities to teach them. And so that is why I love play-based learning. But even that, I felt the need to go a little bit deeper. And I try my very best to take time all day long to stop and help friends with the situation that I observe, right? Even if it's not a big situation, even if there isn't any anger or yelling, I still will see little nuances of things and I like to help them through that. But I also knew that by kind of giving everybody in the classroom the same vocabulary, the same experience, the shared experience, that it might actually accelerate it. And so I began toying with the idea of actually sitting kiddos down in a whole group and having a social emotional lesson. Now, this is not to say that I have totally just been wiped everything else out. Like I taught you that one time at Circle. I hope you were here, right? No, no. This, in my mind, these lessons in this whole group setting were just to create another moment for them, another learning moment, and maybe even a touch point for them later on that we all can relate to because we all experienced it. Remember that time we read about? Remember that time we did this, right? Because we all did it. And so that's helpful. And also, I found that giving everyone in the class the same vocabulary, the same type of verbiage when I'm talking to them, they start using it with their friends, right? We did a lesson on patience, and I was just like amazed at how many of them were saying to their other friends, that's not how we show patience. You have to stand quietly. And they're fully understanding these concepts. And they're even going out on a limb and helping their friend and confronting their friend who isn't doing that right now. And so that's where I see the benefit of being able to take that time, sit down as a group, and talk about social emotional skills. And so I kind of wanted to go into some of the skills that I have found that I think children need in order to be able to make a friend, to be a good friend, and to kind of sustain that friendship, that relationship, right? Because we are social beings, but we aren't always knowing of these things, and our small children need to be taught them. And so here's kind of just a quick list. There's actually quite a few of them. When you stop and think about how many things actually go into teaching, trying to teach children how to be a friend, there's quite a few. Like, first, you got to teach them how to be a friend, right? I also want to teach them how to include others when we play, because that's always something, right? Like, no, you can't play with us. Or we see this lonely person, but we haven't reached out to them. How do we do that? Can we do that? Or even asking to play, right? Can I play with you guys? That's such a huge skill. And many of the kids I've had in my class are missing that skill completely. And so that's where it turns into my job. Sharing turn taking. I have this right now. I will give it to you when I'm done, right? Well, I don't have to give it to you right now. Or, yeah, well, you want to play with me, right? Those type of things. Having more than one friend, that is something that has surprised me in pre-K, is that many of them want a best friend, and you are my only friend, and there are no other friends. And so then you get a lot of exclusion. And we go back to that, including others when we play, and how, more friends are fun. And sometimes it's okay if you play this with this friend and play this with this friend, right? And those are skills that elementary teachers struggle with constantly on the playground because, I remember in first grade, I was just kind of like, so this child doesn't want to play with me, and they don't want to play this. And, just they haven't had those problem solving techniques and learned what to do to get past some of that. And it really can be hard when our kiddos get older and not know how to manage that social side of it. So what a good friend looks like and sounds like, does what was just said sound like someone who's being a good friend? And so just laying it out there, like, this is what it looks like. This is what it sounds like. How to show kindness. That's something we all need to remind ourselves to do all the time, right? Show kindness, slow down, have empathy, listen to our friends. How can I show my friend that I care about them? So we can talk about that. We can talk about how to listen to friends, because sometimes all the time, they're quite egocentric little beings. And so they are focused on them. And it's hard to help them listen to what their friend is saying, because their friend is communicating, but they need to let that communication in. And so we talk about that. How to apologize to friends. That's a hard one for some kiddos and adults, right? And so what does that really look like when I say an apology? And what kind of things should I do and should I say? And also recognizing just some of the problems that friends have, and sometimes we will just lay them out in one of the lessons. It's just like, sometimes friends have this problem, and you'll start seeing them going, oh yeah, that happened to me when, and so they're relating to that. How to talk out those problems with friends. That is probably one we could do for years and years, right? Is how to actually communicate with this other friend. But I wanted to just lay some groundwork and create a shared experience in these lessons where we could kind of go back to that when we are experiencing it again, way to handle friend problems, and when and how to ask for an adult's help, right? Because sometimes we give them all these tools in their tool belt and we say, do this, and they do that, and it's still not working, right? That's when we need them to know how to approach an adult, how to get an adult's help, and when that is something you need to do. And so, even still now, after we have practiced this many times, I will ask them, have you went and talked to that friend yet? And it's like, oh, yes, nope, I haven't. And that's what I want you to do first. And then if we're still having problems, coming to me and I can help you guys through this, right? Kind of helping them be a little bit more independent. And then, so I've noticed some awesome things by doing these lessons. Like I mentioned before, I've noticed them kind of telling each other, remember, that's not what patience looks like, things like that. I have noticed more of the language going on in their play. I also have been able to relate back. Remember when we read this story about giraffe who couldn't dance? He couldn't dance yet, right? Yet, because we did a lesson that wasn't friendship based necessarily, but it was a lesson on growth mindset, right? And so he couldn't do it yet. You can do it too. And so we're able to draw back on that experience that we all had together. And so I really look at these lessons as just another touch point in teaching them. This is not going to be mastered by the end of pre-K, right? This list of things that I want to help them learn is not necessarily going to be mastered by every child going out of here. That's not my expectation. My expectation truly is that I give them exposure to this, right? We have this shared experience that we can touch back to. It's another time that they're practicing or hearing about or speaking about the skill. That's really what I view these as. And so when I put them out into the world, the one thing I didn't want was for them to be looked at as, well, remember, we learned that. So now you've learned that. And so now you should be able to do that, because that just isn't how young children learn. And it's just not a good expectation on them, because they need to practice these skills just like they need to practice tying their shoes and zipping their coats. It's not going to happen in one setting. And these skills, these social skills, are not going to happen in one setting. But if I can be one more touch point on that road to learning these things, then awesome, right? So I kind of want to walk you through what we do in the lesson itself. And so I do these weekly. And at the beginning of the year, I found that we were focusing more on self-awareness, social awareness, who are you, what emotions you have inside of you, and how those emotions are okay, and who's around you, and how are you different, how are you the same, and we need to respect everyone, those type of things. And when it was the beginning of the year, I noticed that they obviously didn't have the attention span that they have the second half of the year. They also didn't know each other or me as well. And so there wasn't as much discussion as I find there is later in the year. And so at the beginning of the year, I'd find myself generally doing it one time a week, the lesson. Now I have to break the lesson into 2 different days. Same lesson, but they have so much to say. And I know that that is because they feel comfortable in our classroom. They have relationships in our classroom. They're starting to have a longer attention span, and they're starting to really grasp some of these concepts. And so that's kind of how I go about it. 1 week, or beginning of the year, one time a week. When I notice they're kind of ready for more and the lessons are getting longer and longer, I start breaking them up into 2 days. So let me walk through what we do. We always start with a book. And the reason for always starting with a book is because books and kids go hand in hand, and they're so relatable. And many times they have characters that don't necessarily, they can kind of look at someone else as that bad example or that good example, or it doesn't relate to them yet, right? Just like in the Noah David book, it's not one we necessarily read for social emotional, but they can look at him and see the things he shouldn't do. And so I like to use books in that way. And so this lesson that I'm going to share with you is actually about talking out your problems with your friends. And so I found this awesome book, and it's called Talk and Work It Out. And there's quite a few of these. If you don't own any of these, they're pretty awesome. They're by Sherry J. Miners, and she does an awesome job with helping children learn these skills. She really breaks it down really nicely. And so, like in this book, it talks about how we can have differing opinions, right? Him and his brother want to play different games, and so that makes him angry, and you can see it on his face that he's angry. And something else that bothers me is that she doesn't want to play ball. All those type of things. It's going through, I love it because it's going through things that children can relate to. Totally. So after we read and kind of talk about that, I like to go through and discuss with them, right? Take what we read in the book and kind of elaborate on that. And so I went ahead and went through for each of these lessons, created my own discussion questions. I am one of those people who doesn't do as well with off the cuff. I kind of need to have it planned out, have it in my head, or have it near me. And so I found that for me, it's best just to bring this with me to the carpet because I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to forget something. I don't want the lesson to feel chopped up and not fluid. And so I bring this with me. So we read and we discuss. So like with this topic, here's some of the discussion questions I may ask them, right? When we're having a problem with someone else, we have to tell them, just like in the book, when, and then I can elaborate on that, right? When we get mad, we sometimes want to use our hands. Has that ever happened to you? And then we start talking about that. Like, have you ever felt your hands do this, or wanted to hit, or wanted to kick? And some of them won't, and some of them will totally relate with that. Like, yeah, I totally would like to hit them when they do this. And that's just honesty right there, right? And that is just part of the anger. And then another one is when we get mad, we sometimes want to use our hands, or maybe even our feet and our mouth to say mean things, but that isn't okay to do. That is hurtful. And so the next kind of discussion point is to make sure we aren't hurting others. We have to talk it out, right? We have to talk about the problem. And so then a lot of times I will go into maybe a scenario. I will also use the extension activity out that is on the bottom of here. So after maybe I act out a quick scenario, if I feel like kiddos aren't getting the hang of it, I might do that. But generally the extension activity is something that they definitely start to understand. Some of them in some of the lessons are like a sorting. Some of them are kind of scenarios. And what do you think about these scenarios? Some of them are creating a anchor chart. Like we have a when I'm mad anchor chart. And so we make it together. They help me make it. And so they have their own, they're invested into it, right? And we hang it on the wall and we talk about things we can do when we're angry. And so they can go visit that and I can help them go to that. And they'll even point it out, right? Of things we can do when we're angry. And so maybe we'll make an anchor chart. But this particular one has some scenarios. And like the first one, and we read a lot of Elephant and Piggy. And so we know a lot about these speaking boxes, right? And we talk about these how if they look kind of like this, like popcorn, they are thoughts and they're coming from her head. But if it looks more like this, then it's a speaking bubble. It's coming from her mouth. And so my children have had a lot of experiences in that. So these make sense to them, but I show them like, look, she doesn't like it. He's making a funny face and she's thinking in her head, he's making faces at me and I don't like it. So I ask them, what should she do, right? Should she use her hands? And there's pictures of hands to kind of help drive home that. Should she growl at him and push him away? Or should she talk with her voice and say, please stop making faces at me. I don't like it. And so then we talk about which one is going to get the result she wants. Which one's going to get him to stop doing that? Which one is the okay way to handle that? And so we kind of run through all of these, right? He took my train and I want it back. Now, these are thinking bubbles, right? Because I want them to decide what he should do next. And so should he use his hands and just take it out of his hand? I mean, he did that to you. Isn't that what you should do? Or should you say, please give me back my train? And if you want to turn with my train, you can ask me for a turn. This is not out of the realm of what preschoolers can do. It's just not. They are able to use these big statements. They are able to use big words, and they are able to understand after taught and after practice that we can do this a different way, right? And so we go through all of these, and this is just one lesson in so many that we do, but I'm just focusing with them on which should I do. When I stop and think these things in my brain, should I use my hand or should I stop and use my voice? And so that's later when we have someone use their hands, I can talk to just them and say, remember that time we read about talking it out? We're going to work on that. Next time, let's talk it out. What would that sound like? What would that look like, right? And so again, we have that shared experience that we get to go back to together because we did this lesson together. And because I like to sing songs and because I feel like songs really help children relate, there is a song included. There's this one's that to If You're Happy and If You Know It. So maybe I start seeing something happening in the classroom and I can start singing, if you're having a problem, talk it out. If you're having a problem, talk it out. If you're having a problem, use your words, not your hands. If you're having a problem, talk it out, right? I don't have to be on cue. They don't care, but they hear my singing words, and that can be even a reminder to them. Oh yeah, I need to probably talk it out, right? So that is what we do in each lesson. We always start with reading. I loved the discussion time because I sometimes am just crazy amazed at how they grasp these concepts, how they relate to them. Oh, I had that happen to me. Or one time my sister did this, totally relatable. And I also love that they're conversing. They're saying, well, she shouldn't do that. Why would she do that? That's not kind. And some of them are really grasping this. And others that I have, and I will tell you, I have some friends who sometimes during a lesson will sit very quietly. They don't have a lot to say, but you can see those little wheels turning. And that is just absolutely the best because this may be some new information to them, right? I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know how to do that. And so watch for those things, right? It may not just be the ones that are shouting out and saying, oh yeah, I totally get that. It may be some of our quieter ones that are gaining the most from this. And that is why I also like to do it as a whole group, because sometimes we aren't seeing everything that goes on in the classroom, and we aren't maybe seeing an underlying problem or an underlying concern or situation going on. And so this can kind of help tamper that down and help you set that stage for this is what it looks like in our classroom, right? So that is what I want to go through with you. I just kind of wanted to show you what we do in each of these lessons. And so like at the beginning, like I said before, more towards the beginning of the year, I can do the whole lesson in our one session a day. I usually do them on, what do I do them on? Wednesdays, I believe. And I usually do them in about 10 minutes at the beginning of the year. The end of the year, we've got lots of talkers and they've got so many wonderful things to say that I want to make sure that they are all heard. So I start doing them, Wednesday and Friday for the 10 minutes. And so now I'm basically doubling my amount of time that we're spending on it. And of course, you're always reading the room. You're reading where they are with the lesson, but I don't want to stifle those thoughts and those related thoughts to what we're talking about. And so that is why I generally find that I need to extend that later. But I'm hoping you found that helpful. If you're wanting to look at some of the lessons that I do have, I have 8 units of them. And as I kind of went over before, they go through, starting from self all the way down to working with other friends and working on relationships and the friendship stuff. But if I always think too that if you're seeing a problem in your classroom with maybe friendships or with maybe kids not including other kids, that right there can be a time where you stop and you do a lesson and you maybe repeat that lesson or you maybe do pieces of it and you add to it all week. but bringing just in that one, if you're seeing the problem, going ahead and addressing that problem right there in a whole group so that everyone's kind of on the same page. You've kind of created this standard of this is what this is going to look like in our classroom. And then you can build upon that in their individual play and during situations as they rise. But I always think you should go and find something to teach them, book to read, discussion to be had, an activity to do to help them if you see these problems arise. Because when you see them, that observation is just telling you that they need more help in that area. They need more practice in that area. And if it just keeps happening, that's just more evidence to you that they need to be taught this skill, right? It did not get learned. And so our observations are always huge, but especially in the social emotional realm. I have a link to these. Actually just the whole gamut, the whole social emotional gamut of lessons that I have, all 8 units. And if you're looking for more of the friendship ones, you're going to look in about 6, 7, and 8 of them. Those last 3 units really talk about friendship, and you can find those in my TPT store. But I just wanted you more than anything to think about how you could bring in a read aloud and a discussion time and maybe even an extension activity into your day to help teach kiddos social emotional skills, especially this February when we always are talking about friendship and Valentine's Day. So I hope you found this helpful. Please drop me a comment if you enjoyed this, and I so much appreciate you. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.